business lawyer. You're from Louisville. You're in town for a conversation here, and you're nice enough to stop by. You were one of the leaders in bringing Louisville together. Is that correct? Is that a fair
correct,
statement?
McGraw. Thank you so much for having me on this morning.
You got
it's
it.
My pleasure.
Tell us how was Louisville before you made the change?
Louisville was very dysfunctional in terms of governing. The governance structure. We had a county judge executive and a fiscal court. We had a mayor and a board of aldermen. And we needed to speak with one voice. And we didn't have that opportunity. They would go to events together and they would argue about who's going to speak first. And then when you tried to recruit businesses, who was really speaking for the community, they might have a different message. And that sent the wrong signal to people we're trying to attract our community. So that was the big deal, that we had to speak with one voice on behalf of our community, to our legislative delegation, to our congressional delegation, to Washington, D.C., and to businesses that we're talking with about it coming to Louisville.
How was this set up? Was this set up 200 years ago when they first started?
It was set up in the beginning.
In the beginning,
correct,
and it's
right.
just sort of evolved, and that's the way it was.
It evolved, and it certainly, we felt, was a very splintered, dysfunctional approach in government.
You did something that I think is probably the hardest thing to do, which is actually go in a different direction, because inertia is so much easier to keep going in the same direction. How long ago did you make this change?
Well, what happened, we voted in 2000. And the vote was 54-46. It was a countywide vote that was authorized by statute by the Kentucky State Legislature. We started the planning process in 1997. So we had a 3-year period, and that's what I think you're going to have in Better Together. You've had a 2-year study with respect to your community, and now you need to get the message out to the people and bring them together with respect to this overall plan.
And the plan, so you put forward how you wanted to govern yourselves going forward in 2000. It passed by 54% of the vote?
54-46.
Which is not an overwhelming majority by any stretch of the imagination.
No, it was not. It was very difficult because it's easy to vote no. I mean, people don't want to have change. They're worried about change, and that's what you're going to be faced with here. You have to show them all the benefits of the merger, and that's what we tried to do. We ran our campaign like a political campaign. We raised $1.6 million that had failed 3 times before, so we knew what was wrong in past campaigns. It was a top-down campaign before.
Right.
We didn't handle it that way. We handled it like a professional campaign. We had polling. We had direct mail. We had TV advertising. We did it the right way, just like we're electing a candidate. We didn't do it like a regular public referendum.
Sure. Some people, I'm assuming, lost power and were against it because they weren't going to have a power seat going forward.
McGraw, you're exactly right. That's what we ran into in the beginning when we did our initial polling. We had a third of the people that were in favor. We had a third of the people that were undecided and a third of the people that were opposed. A lot of the elected officials who thought they might lose their positions, and they were worried about themselves, not the community, with all due respect to them, they were opposed to it. A lot of the African American community was opposed to it, and we dealt with that because we had a professor from the University of Louisville that set up the districts from which the 26 council members would be elected, and we said we're going to make a commitment based on that we will have 5 or 6 elected African Americans from the districts, because we wanted to have appropriate diversity and appropriate representations. And it turned out that 6 African Americans were elected to the First Metro Council of 26 members, just as we suggested. But as a practical matter, you still had a lot of pushback initially from the African American community. They voted against it a lot of times because they were worried about representation. But we lived up to our commitment. Ed
Glastock is with us. He's in town for a conversation. He led the delegation in Louisville to sort of change the way they govern themselves. Here in the region, I've often heard people say, wait a minute, hold on a second. I don't want to. I like my town. I like my mayor. I like my police chief. I don't like those people across the way. I don't like that high school. You want me to now break bread with these people? How did you get over that whole regionalism side?
All
of
right.
it?
Initially, what happened was they were trying to push out all these incorporated cities. Our approach was different. We said we're going to do it this way. And this was based on feedback and study from the people, of course, just like Better Together. We said, look, let's merge the chief executive's role, the county judge executive, and the mayor into a metro mayor. That's one. We're going to merge the legislative role. The situation then was fiscal court and the Board of Aldermen. We merged that. Now, what are we going to do about those cities, those 6-class incorporated cities? We're going to leave them alone. We said, look, if you want to still have a mayor in your community, that's fine. If you want to have your garbage collection and whatever you want to do in your city, that's fine. We're not going to deal with that as a part of this merger. Later on, if you see advantages, you can roll right into the city, the merged city. But if you want to keep your your independence, then you can do so. And we decided not to deal with the fire districts. If you start dealing with fire districts, it's a political problem. And we knew that, and we studied that. We said, okay, leave the fire districts the way they are. But we are, and it was a pushback on the police, but we are going to have a unified police department so we can be innovative, so we can provide great protection and safety for our people. So we did merge the police departments. But we did try to address the point you're making, and that is people want to have some power structure on their own in some of these smaller communities.
Right. Interesting stuff. Ed Glassstock with us from Louisville. Indianapolis did something similar. Did you look to Indianapolis and to see how they did it?
We did. We looked at Indianapolis and we looked at Nashville, and we decided to modify to a certain extent the different cities, but we followed a lot of the lead from Indianapolis and Nashville. I give them a lot of credit. You'll notice in Better Together that we are spending only 50% per capita as compared to St. Louis and St. Louis County.
Say that again.
50%.
Say that again.
The cost of government, in Louisville is only 50% per capita compared. It's 50% less per capita. Let's put it that way.
Right.
Than it is in St. Louis and St. Louis County. Now they said the same thing about Indianapolis, but better apart. Started questioning some of that. I've noticed they haven't questioned Louisville. And I think it's important. We have now, this past year, a $12.6 million deficit because, or surplus, if you will, the mayor just announced because of the way the metro government's organized. You save so much. You're much more responsive to the people. We have websites that deal with licensing and strategic planning and all of those things. You can do so much more if you can speak with one voice to the community, and to Washington, to the congressional delegation, and to the state legislature.
To show you how dysfunctional St. Louis is, I know a business owner who has a business in St. Louis County. And when they do business in the city, they get taxed the 1% earnings on the business they do in the city, but not the county. So bookkeeping-wise, as a businessman, that would drive anybody batty.
It absolutely. You pull the community apart. And you get confused about taxes for individuals, where they live, and where the business is located, and the allocation of taxes. You get involved in tax increment financing, and whether that benefits one part of the community and not the other.
But you're also pitting one side of the street against the other side of the street.
It's a competitive situation. You can't come together as a community and have unity until you bring all these things together and not compete internally. You've got enough competition from other cities.
Yeah.
You don't need to be competing with yourself.
So Louisville passed this in 2000.
In 2000. Mm-hmm.
You've had 16 years since the vote.
Right.
What's transpired in the last 16 years?
Growth. Everybody's coming together. We're now recognized as one of the top 20 cities in the country. We weren't before because we were too small as a city. So we had to have, now if Metro is 1.3 million, certainly about half or less than half as big as
right.
St. Louis County. But as a result of that, the consultants now look at us. If you're not with a top 20 city, they don't even look at you for regional headquarters or national headquarters. So there's so many advantages to it, and speaking with one voice, and from the public sector side and the private sector side, and I know that you've done that from the private sector side here. We had to get our act together with respect to the private sector because we were splintered in the business community. We had 3 different organizations. So we put that together before we asked the public to vote on the public sector side and merger.
How is the police, them coming together 16 years?
It came together fine with the chief of police now, and with all the innovation and controls that they have. We can spend more money to upgrade the facilities, the communication network and everything, and good response rates. They do a great job. Everybody seems to be happy, except, there are going to be a few people grumble from time to time, but on balance, I think everybody feels real good about metro government in Louisville.
Done any polls as to if you were to vote again 16 years later, would it be more than 54% of the vote in favor?
Without question.
Really?
Without question. Because when we first started, it was a third in favor, a third undecided, and a third opposed. And we had to move the needle with respect to get them over from a third to 54%.
Right.
And we had to educate them, and it's different, it's change. And now they see what has happened. They see that we have lived up to the commitments we made, what would happen in our community, higher growth, more efficient government, more responsive government, an outstanding mayor. We roll back, we had a mayor, Mayor Abramson, he's called Mayor for Life. He was 3 terms prior to merger because he couldn't succeed himself. So he got involved. He joined our law firm because he couldn't succeed himself, and he worked hard to pass metro government and pass merger, and then he was reelected mayor for 2 more terms.
The state of Kentucky doesn't get a lot of attention here in Missouri, but the little bit I know about Kentucky, it's a very, and I don't use this in a liberal conservative way, but a very progressive, a very forward-thinking state. And I look at you and I listen to this and I'm envious because I know St. Louis, the argument is that we're stuck, but I suspect that if you went back to 1999 and 2000, people would say the same things about Louisville that I'm saying about St. Louis today.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Not as progressive as we should be, not forward-thinking, not innovative, not looking at new ideas because we're so splintered. We're competing internally and not looking externally. So I think you're exactly right on.
So you're saying there's hope for us here in St. Louis?
I think you have a wonderful city. I love St. Louis, and when I was a youngster growing up in Western Kentucky, I used to love to come over here and see the Cardinals, and we got so excited about that, and that a group of businessmen, a group of us, bought the AAA team so we could be affiliated with the Cardinals.
Oh, so you were part of the Memphis Redbirds?
We had the Louisville Redbirds for 15 years. We were affiliated, and then of course when Memphis is closer and you got a AAA club in Memphis, so the Cardinals switched, and like they should have, I guess. We had to switch to the Reds, but we missed the Cardinals, and it was a great relationship.
If I go down to Louisville, will you give me a backstage look at the Louisville Slugger plant down there?
Give you anything you want down there with Slugger Field. You can have any seat or interview anybody and look it over and be happy to have you meet with the mayor. I'd love for you to meet with the mayor so that you could have him verify exactly what I'm telling you. We've got Mayor Greg Fisher there now. He's doing a wonderful job. He's a businessman, but he was willing to step in because, he could bring high-quality talent to metro government, and that's why he's there.
And last question for you, because I know you got to run, but it's great getting a different perspective from outside of the region. And to the people who are leery, who are worried, I think their fear, even though I don't necessarily agree with it, I think it's legitimate to them. It's I can understand their fears. I can understand, hey, wait a minute, how are we going to get screwed on this going forward, right? Because so many times in the past, people have told them one thing and have done something else.
Well, I think anytime you try to change something, people are concerned, they're defensive, they have a fear, but they need to, that's why that Better Together needs to organize different forums, have meetings, answer the questions. That's what we had to do with that third who were undecided. We had to find out why they were undecided, what their fears were. We had to address those fears in order to get them over the line. That's what you have to do. You have to make sure people understand it. They can look at track records in Louisville, Indianapolis, and Nashville, and I think all the people, the majority of the people are really happy, and they will be very comfortable if they merge St. Louis and St. Louis County. I'm convinced of that.
The business community in Louisville, I guess, all systems go. Everyone's thrilled, right? Because you're all pulling in the same direction.
Thrilled to death with the way things are going. Certainly, we want more business, more opportunities, and we continue to pursue them.
Right.
But we're happy with our quality of life, and I think you saw an indication of that with Muhammad Ali's service in Louisville. We had that at our new Yum Arena, and we had 1 billion people watching, and the eyes were on Louisville, and it showed how we were unified in our approach, honoring Muhammad Ali. There was some controversy in the past, but everybody came together in that community, and that's the way they do it. The people in Louisville and Kentucky come together and try to move the state and the community to the next level.
Ed Glastock with us, a business lawyer in town for a conversation here in St. Louis, sponsored by Better Together, where we had a chance to spend a couple minutes with him. He helped lead the consolidation effort in Louisville. Ed, thank you very much for your time.
Oh, my pleasure, and thank you so much, McGraw, for having me, and come to Louisville, and certainly
I'll take you up on that Louisville Slugger plant. What a great story
that is. We'd be happy
to
do it.
You got it. 9:27 here, Big 550 KTRS.